Well, through the congressional hearing and that video that's gone viral, the three top universities continue to face severe backlash in the USA and across the world. At several forums, they're being called out for defending increasing cases of campus anti-Semitism. Now, the University of Penn President Liz Magill and Harvard University President Claudine Gay have taken a U-turn. Both appear to be walking back from some of their controversial comments made during the congressional hearing. While University of Pennsylvania President Liz Magill has said that she was focused on university's long-standing policies aligned with the US Constitution, which say that speech alone is not punishable. Harvard University President Claudine Gay, clarifying her testimony, said that there are some who have confused a right to freedom of expression or free expression with the idea that Harvard will condone calls for violence against Jewish students. Does it end here, ladies and gentlemen, or are these now becoming hotbeds for a certain level of bigotry that's been driven because there has been an intellectual infiltration of neo-left corrupted by pan-Islam? Now, this is a heady concoction which has been spoken about by authors and thinkers like Rajiv Malhotra and Dr. Vijaya Vishwanathan in Snakes in the Ganga. But tonight, we have a very, very erudite, august panel who can elaborate and speak more about what perhaps those from Bharat are also facing as a result of what's happening there. Is it driven only by this entire anti-Semitic values, or does that extend and have its own entire interpretations based on where the origins of that particular person or the ancestry is? So is there a particular agenda against Bharat too that's driven, just like there is an agenda against Jews in Israel or Israelis? Anand Ranganathan stays on with us, Pandit Satish Sharma, author, with us. And also, he's been a member of the British Board of Dharmic Scholars. Makrand Paranjpe, Professor JNU, with us. And Sarah Al-Gates, Hindu human rights activist, also with us. Namaste. Thank you very, very much, everyone, for joining us. Good to have you all. Saraji, I know it's way past midnight. It's nearly about 2 a.m. Correct me if I'm wrong, where you're joining us, but you've stayed up for us. So let me start with you. Is this a pattern of anti-Semitism that's only prevalent in top academia in the US? Or do you believe that this is spreading elsewhere too? And does it restrict itself only to Jews?
Well, we've seen throughout the past few years with the Dismantling Global Hindutva conference that many of the same activists, or scholar activists as they call themselves, who were then accusing Hindus of being like the white supremacist Zionists and such, during that period, they're now active and they're fighting what they believe to be fighting on behalf of the Palestinians. But there is that line that's been blurred continuously when it comes to whether they're supporting Palestinians or the Al-Aqsa flood movement, which was kicked off by Hamas. So when they gave a call for a global movement, particularly from Muslims and also from people of the free world, they said, they kicked off a global movement, and the socialists sanitised the language that they used when they were calling people to participate in these pro-Palestine demonstrations. And they distinguished, or they separated, they weeded out the Islamist language that was used by Hamas and the religious extremist language that was used by Hamas. And then they mobilised groups on campuses all over the world. And we've seen that all over the world, but it's particularly disturbing when it comes from the Ivy League establishments, because these are the knowledge producers and these are the ones that shape policy. So we've been seeing this for a long time, and yes, it does affect India, because the same group are theorising in these establishments that Hindus are colonisers, that they've magically colonised India, which is the most bizarre thing. But if you say a lie, enough times, people believe it. And that's exactly what I think's happened.
But how do you think these terms are being loosely associated? How are fascists being, Hindus are being called fascists, Hindutvawadis are being called fascists, Jews are being called and branded oppressors? So who decides who these oppressed are, who the oppressors are? Or does history not matter? Do facts not matter here?
Well, obviously it's whoever gets the money and the funding for their departments in the universities who can produce the material to write the theories. Because if we had funding to write theories and to go back and to critique all of this material, we need, literally we need thousands of people on the ground. We've got dozens of university departments signing their name onto, you know, what they call teach-ins that, you know, they say that there's a problem with safety on campus, and that it's a, you know, it's problematic to be calling for safety for Jews on campus and speaking out against anti-Semitism. And they say that anti-Semitism is being weaponized, and all of the Middle Eastern departments have signed up to that. So it is a problem. Yes, and it's the same people who are theorising that Hindus have weaponised Hinduphobia. So that's where they really synchronise.
Because it's from this academia, Makranji, that this entire dismantled global Hindutva emanated. The SB 403 stemmed from these kind of academic thinkers. The John Doe now stands revealed. We'll get Pandit Satish Sharma ji to speak about that too. But let me ask you, sir, freedom of expression, freedom of speech, where does it stop? Where does it? And should there be no reasonable restrictions?
See, the first thing that I noticed yesterday when they played you know, these hearings, the testimonies that the three top presidents gave, they all followed the same template. Everyone talked about context. Everybody said that they're not actionable if it's only speech. And they were constantly hedging without saying very clearly that calls for genocide, regardless of the context, are abhorrent and should be stopped. So the way I look at it is that this is a real opportunity to push back, because this time, you know, those who speak against the Jewish people in the US, who are a protected minority, and also the Jewish people are very powerful in the industry, in business, on Wall Street, and in the media. So the pushback is going to be very, very strong. As you yourself said, there's been a turnaround. And this is an opportunity for other groups like the Hindus to also step in and show how this wokeism has infected you know, US campuses, the top campuses. But I look at this as a silver lining, because I think that America, in fact, just think about it. There is a congressional committee which can call a president of a university and hold them, you know, responsible for what is happening on their campuses. Do you think that can be done in India? On my own campus, was anybody held responsible for what happened in 2016? I myself was there and a witness, and I think Anand was there too. My point is that there are things in the American system that you know, we can learn from, how they are capable of solving a problem and rectifying it. And the Hindu community, especially in the US, you know, has shown a remarkable unity of purpose and a strategic smartness in intervening at this time. So I think this is a time to realign and to learn, you know, from the pushback that the Jewish community has given. And I think there are signs of hope, because wokeism is a dead end. And I think the top campuses are beginning to see that, you know, things like microaggression or, you know, their entire agenda of political correctness is not really conducive to producing useful knowledge either about self or about society. So I think that I'm looking at this as an opportunity, you know, to really make a difference and change the discourse.
But does that stop there only, Pandit Satish Sharma ji? Is it only with these 3 or 4 academic institutions in the US? Or is this far more endemic across top academia across the world? And how much of it is actually now percolating back into institutions in Bharat? Because somewhere this entire aping the West and holding them to the highest standards, and a lot of them who are perhaps coached there are coming back here. And is it now being percolated back into the Bharatiya system too?
Jai Shri Ramanji, and thank you for raising this issue. I will just refer to the very first time when it was mooted that academic institutions from the West should be given free rein to establish themselves in Bharat. At that time, myself and many people who were concerned about this said, no, do not do this. There is due diligence that should be done firsthand. If it was a very large corporation coming in, bringing products, there would be due diligence done. Whereas in this instance, it seemed to be an open door saying, come and bring your gifts. I'm actually in agreement with Professor Palanjape when he said that there is a silver lining. What we are seeing is the underbelly of a subprime educational system being revealed. Please have no doubts about this. This is not an institutional ethos which exists to bring out of an individual what their gifts are, to find what those gifts are, to equip them with the tools to live a fulfilled life, to equip them with what they need to contribute to the maximum to society. Isn't that what education is supposed to be? And yet there is no trace of that in the manner in which these institutions are run. So absolutely we shouldn't allow them in. I would say stop. Do not allow them to bring this particular brand of conditioning, brainwashing, radicalization into Bharat. There is one other thing I just wanted to pick on. You mentioned freedom of speech a few moments ago.
Yeah.
You know, the American universities say we value freedom of speech, but it's an accepted principle that in academia, freedom of speech exists within a container. And the purpose of that container is to have freedom to explore the most contentious issues without animosity and without malice to any particular group. What we're actually witnessing on the campuses is not a container. It is an abuse of freedom of speech, and I would say that this crosses the line. An incitement to genocide, not being included within bullying policies. I would have thought if this was not such an august group of presidents, one would have thought that these are amateurs in a sixth form students' union struggling with the concepts of what freedom of speech and protection of students is all about. I would say without a doubt that this is a good thing. In fact, I did a program earlier this morning, and as a result of it, a number of parents from Bharat reached out and said, we have got no intention now of sending our children to the United States or the United Kingdom for further education. Thank you so much for highlighting these points, and I think that is the most valuable thing that has emerged out of this whole issue. We do not want subprime education.
But we also, but this is something. But Panditji, I'm interrupting you because Dr. Anand Ranganathan raised another issue, that it will be a few hundreds or perhaps a few thousand students who are going outside our shores to study, and you may even put that number into a few 100,000 students. But there are crores and crores of students who here in Bharat. What education are they getting? What is it that they are being taught? Are they being taught to think straight, or are they also being taught the very same stories and the very same kind of or line of thought or expression what is being witnessed in campuses abroad? Dr. Ranganathan.
Yeah, just to pick on that point, Anand, first of all, thank you so much for this arranging this wonderful panel. It's been a great discussion. But just to pick on that point before I make my own points, when you talk about what Indian kids, crores of them have been taught, the manifesto of Tipu Sultan in his own words and language says annihilation of the infidel or the kafir is a sacred duty of every Muslim. And we celebrate Tipu Jayanti in this country. We eulogize Tipu in our school textbooks. So much for, saying that everything is hunky-dory in our education system. But I'd like to make 3 points, and I think they're fairly important, because I speak here as a free speech absolutist. And frankly, today I feel very lucky to have, gone to the other Cambridge and not to these Harvard and MIT guys, because the level of juvenile argument and their understanding and analytical skills as to what constitutes or comes under the ambit of free speech is just shocking. A call for a genocide cannot be free speech, and I speak as a free speech absolutist. It's like giving a rape threat. I'm sorry. You're not allowed to do that, because it promises to deliver immediate or maybe a little bit delayed harm to the victim. Thousands of them. It's like that Gustakhe Rasool ki ek hi saza sar tan se juda. You cannot make a call for beheading under the ambit of free speech. So it is totally unacceptable, and it is something that these presidents should have known, and it's really shameful and embarrassing that they don't understand what is free speech. Number two, I would have loved had the congresswoman who was questioning them made it completely watertight to make sure whether these three are anti-Semites or they're just plain ignorant people. She should have asked them, is the call for a Muslim genocide also violating your code of conduct? Had they said, yes it is, and the call for Jewish genocide is not, then they were anti-Semites. But had they said, yes, call for genocide of every community does not violate our code of conduct, then they're plain ignorant. They have no idea what free speech is, but they're not, at least they're not anti-Semites. So that is where it is. Thirdly, and this is also very important, what happens to the religious books that are the root cause for anti-Semitism? Did the Harvard president or the MIT president say that Jews are the worst of creatures, 98-6? Did he say that Jews should be destroyed? Jews are condemned to hell? No, he didn't. But we are completely silent about the people who believe in these verses, not only believe in them, who refuse to condemn them. So, you know, the world is looking at an elephant in the room and not looking at it. That's all I'll say on this matter.
So they know the elephant in the room, but they don't know that there is the elephant in the room. Sarah Gates, how would you want this to be reformed, or how is it that, because some of these academic institutions are the gold standard. Parents, students aspire to go and study there. A lot of the big top Jewish billionaires, businessmen have all pulled back funding, rolled back funding once they realized what is going on in these campuses. Sadly, and this is a statement made by the likes of Rajiv Malhotra and Dr. Vijaya Vishwanathan, some of the top business houses from our country are funding some of these academic institutions, especially humanities studies there. And they perhaps, we do not know whether they've done an audit of what's being taught or what's being proliferated there, but there has been no reaction. There was no reaction even when there were calls to dismantle Hindutva.
Well, I did see when I was looking for postdoctoral opportunities that Mahindra is funding a program in environmental humanities, which I found is, you know, it's my genre, it's what I do, environmental humanities, but I'd never study in Harvard. And I started to wonder why they're funding Harvard to run these programs. I'm studying environmental humanities through the lens of the Bhagavad Gita. Why can't I do that in India? Why can't I get funding, which is an attractive funding, to live and study at a postdoctoral level in India? So Mahindra could, just all of these funds could be pulled out, like we've seen with some of the Jewish philanthropists have just pulled their funds out. And so that then does have a repercussion for the university, and it gives them an incentive, not necessarily to toe any lines, but to recognise anti-Semitism. One of the presidents didn't know, which is a common knowledge thing, that anti-Semitism is the highest form of hate crime in America. So when she was asked whether or not, you know, she knew, she didn't know. So that's the first thing. The fact that she didn't know that, and she's at a congressional hearing, is a very serious issue. And the diversity, equity and inclusion officers were found to be liking and engaging with posts that were pro-Palestinian. And a majority of these diversity, equity and inclusion officers. So the so-called providers of equity and inclusion are themselves prejudiced against Jews and biased toward Palestinians. So what can be done about this? Well, they cited the values of Harvard, and that was the reason why they were able to fire certain professors. They've cited a code of conduct, policies, bullying, harassment and intimidation. And then there's Title 6, I think they called it. So they have got, some legal recourse that they can go down, and that will happen due to pressure. But how can we get out of this? Well, I just think defund them. Frankly, I think defund them. Bring your money back into India and attract the brightest minds to India. You're a growing, incredibly intellectual civilization, and you have so much to offer the world. I would rather go there. And there's plenty of me out here. I'd much rather have a cultural experience there than have to study in America. I don't feel safe in America. They had a mass shooting in a university in Nevada. 3 people were killed by a professor, no less.
Yes.
So why would anybody want to go and study there? Why would anyone want to send their kids there? And then you get brainwashed. I don't want to be brainwashed. I want freedom of thought, and that's what I get from Indian traditional knowledge. So it's an attractive, prospect if these philanthropists can, secure the future. And if we have to bring people like me over, I'd be happy to teach there. I'd much prefer to teach in an Indian university, then go and get a big job in America with lots of money. I don't want that. I just want the opportunity to teach truth. That's our job as scholars. So yes, that's one way out of it.
True. Well, fair point made, but Pandit Satish Sharma, what happened with Rashmi Samant, what happened with Vivek Ranjan Agnihotri on campuses, how is that allowing freedom of speech? So if you are pro-Israel, pro-Hindutva, pro-Bharat, then we will not allow. If you are trying to call out Hindu Messiah, you are calling out absolute pan-Islam or pan-Islamism, then you are bigoted. But on the other hand, if you express a pro-Palestine or pro-Hamas kind of a line when you call and when you make these genocide calls, then it's freedom of speech. You're perfectly within your rights to do so. That doesn't kind of sit well, does it?
Yeah, I think we have to. Yeah, I'm sorry. I think we have to accept these presidents' words as indicative of their larger understanding and worldview. We are being too generous in saying that they do not understand the nuances of freedom of speech. That's not the issue. We have some very senior educationalists who have openly decided, contemptuously, if I may say, under oath in front of a hearing, to put forward a protection for people who have decided that it's okay to call for genocide. Now, we have always looked at these things up until this point as casual intellectual observers exploring nuance, but I really would like to ring an alarm bell here, because what's being revealed is a group of people who are happy to leverage and protect hatred against a very vulnerable, smaller minority within their communities. And it's this leveraging of hatred in such a casual manner which should really ring an alarm bell. It would only take one or two small conversational changes to redirect that hatred away from the Jewish community and direct it directly towards us. And I feel that the ground is being laid for that to happen in the very near future. A very serious conversation needs to be had with, as Seroji mentioned, the Mahindras of the world. They need to be asked, why are you funding organizations which are nurturing hatred? That's actually what they're doing. These are not academic institutions anymore. And unless they discard and punish these presidents, I don't think we should believe them. We should not take them at face value.
Right. Makranji.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that there is an insidious and unscrupulous alliance between people who espouse the cult of violence, whether these are radical Islamists or radical Marxists, and they have, or radical other, woke or, political correctness advocates, and they have infiltrated and taken over and contaminated the space of human sciences. Human sciences, by that is meant liberal arts, on the one hand, of humanities, and social sciences or social studies. So the entire spectrum of human searching and quest for truth has been contaminated by these unscrupulous elements, and they have to be called out. We have to push back, and there have to be new alliances, and all these presidents and other people who are underwriting and cloaking and masking, these unscrupulous cult of violence devotees must be called out and held responsible. And I think that this process is starting in the United States, and you may call it conservative backlash, you may call it the Republican people trying to get in or whatever, but there is a churn, and this will not be tolerated any longer. That's why I said there's a silver lining, and what was happening, and the echoes of it in India and universities like Ashoka and Jindal. Mahindras, by the way, they run their own university, which is not so bad. So I'm saying that this is not acceptable. It has to be called out. There has to be a pushback, and this has to be systematic, and new alliances have to be formed, and we need to produce better research and better scholarship, not just ideology.
Well, at least now we're talking about it, and it's come to our cognizance. Perhaps it's right out there for us to look at it, and that perhaps is the biggest silver lining. Thank you so much, all of you. Thank you so much. It's such a pleasure to have you and such an august panel here on The Right Stand. Thank you very much. Namaste and Jai Hind to everybody. We're going to wind up on that note. Brass tacks after a very, very short break. Stay with us.